here's another reason why you want to take control of what you're doing.
Everything kind of funnels into the only winning move is not to play the game.
I don't know, guys. This whole thing sounds pre-recorded.
Hey, well, welcome to another edition. And hey, the second season and the first episode of season number 2. We're on our second year of this podcast. Welcome to the Weather Report. We're here with, especially, obviously with Ken, Jason down there from Horrible Designs. I'm Bruce McGee from weatheredsoul.com. And we have a special guest today. His name is Ron Hinshaw from North Speed Restorations in Minnesota. We just want to thank him for being here today. And we're going to be talking about restorations, hot rods. We're going to be talking about all kinds of stuff. And like I said, we just want to welcome you here to our second season because, this is episode 54. So welcome again. And hey, Ron, welcome to the show, man. How you doing?
All right. Thanks, Bruce, Ken, Jason. Bruce, I've met before. Ken, yep. I know. Jason, I'm meeting today. So thanks for having me. And, whatever you want to know, let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me tell you. So I met Ron. I don't even know when we met originally. It's right around the time you started at the shop that you now own. And that shop used to be called Rogers Rod and Custom in Minnesota. And it was Roger Rickey. And he built some of the most incredible hot rods in the Midwest. And when did you join his team, actually, Ron?
I believe I started in 2015.
Okay.
Yeah, I started here, Rogers Rod and Customs. Very iconic shop in Minnesota, like a staple in the Minnesota hot rod community.
Yeah, a lot of the whole Midwest, really.
Yeah.
And what Roger did was really cool, and it was kind of an old school, kind of a Boyd Coddington feel as far as built some really wild cars, super high end stuff. Now Ron was able to buy it from him when he was going to retire, and Ron's taken it to a whole new level. I mean, and I knew Roger for years and years and years, 20, 30 years I've known Roger, and watching what you did with what he's made, how you've taken that rough mold and created it into something that's so much better, so much bigger. It's been great to watch your success with this.
Yeah, he really did set me up with a great platform to start from. And what him and I did together when I worked for him, and, obviously he was working his way out, to retirement and actually, live the dream, really. What I was able to take it to now, he set the stage for me, and I never ever want anybody to think that he didn't do that for me.
When did you discover that you liked cars and hot rods and tinkering and painting and all that stuff? That was it, like you said, we were talking before about an evolution. What was your evolution? When did that all start for you?
I mean, cars have always been on my mind, from young childhood, whatever. Like, it's always been there. It wasn't a family thing or anything like that. It was always like a focus of mine, and even at the young age, teens, ride a bike, BMX bike isn't good enough. Build the BMX. We're in Minnesota, so there's winter. Over winter, take the bike apart. Do everything you can to it over the winter. Put it back together. Hot rod, same thing.
Yep. Did you end up hot rodding everything? Did you end up hot rodding everything that you owned? I mean, from your bike to whichever. I mean, there had to be
anything you can modify gets modified.
Yeah.
Nothing is. I don't want to say nothing's ever good enough, but you always see. I've never bought the thing that I want. I've always bought something and saw its potential.
Was there a certain celebrity or a certain car or a certain vehicle or something that sparked you to begin with? What was that? What was that first inkling? Do you remember?
No.
No. To me, like it would have been like Evil
I don't
Knievel.
think.
Like
I
to
don't
me, it
think
would have been
that
Evil
was.
Knievel. That's what got me on my bike and jumping stuff all over the place. But that's back in back in the
Oh,
1800s.
sure. In shows and movies and things
Yeah.
like that, like you see the things that Dukes of Hazzard, Smokey and the
Mhm.
Bandit, like you see all that stuff. Like I watched Smokey and the Bandit, and I run like road rallies now, like
Mhm.
where we're trying to like beat a clock or get from here to there as fast as we can and things like
Right.
that. And it's
Right.
you can't say that Cannonball Run doesn't have an influence on that.
Exactly.
I
Gumball Rally.
Yeah.
I just watched Bullet last night, which Bullet had the like #1 chase scene of all time. Or it started everything really as
Sure.
far as
Yep.
chasing stuff. So it's like one of the most iconic scenes ever. And then the guy that coordinated that, did the 7-Ups and the French Connection and stuff like that. Well, which all had chase scenes, which were awesome. So that's kind of what sparked me into hot rods and stuff like that too.
Very, very inspired. Things like that were super inspiring to me.
Yeah.
Well, so kind of in the world of what you do to explain people. So Ron's has his business is he builds custom cars. He'll build a car from the ground up out of nothing. He'll take your car and transform it into something. He also does restorations. Recently, I just did a drawing for one of his customers, that Torino, the Fairlight, the
Torino, 68 Torino
Yep.
Tom. Yep.
Unbelievably straight car. I mean, just it's straight as an arrow as you can get. It was just incredible. But so it's a little bit of everything that he does. And we've had some conversations in the past. It's an interesting thing of what is a classic car. And there's a time that we all think of classic cars, and depending how old you are is how classic you think something is. My son, who's 22, my 1997 Lincoln Town Car is a classic car. It's before he was even born. And I know, Ron, you've done some Fox body stuff. You've got some really cool old Mustangs. Well, when you say cool old Mustangs, if you're older than us, like Bruce, you're thinking 66 Mustang.
Yeah.
But when you're you and me, we're thinking an 87 5.0 with a 5-speed.
Sure. And the day that I realized I could get a collector plate for my 91 Jeep, I'm like, all I thought was like, I don't have to buy tabs again. I'm like, this isn't a collector. Like I remember.
Yep.
I hate to date myself, but I graduated in 97.
Same here.
A Jeep, a 91, that was just a normal car. A Fox body Mustang was new.
Right.
Not new, but newish. So I've never, and I kind of ended up with a collection of them. But now thinking of them as a 30-year-old car, it doesn't seem, it's not the same as a 57 Chevy. You know what I mean? To me,
Right.
But it is definitely a classic or a collector, and it's definitely vintage.
Yeah.
It just seems weird to think of it that way for someone who saw them roll off as brand new.
Yep. I remember that when I was in high school, my buddy had a 68 Camaro Rally Sport. And to me, it wasn't a classic then, but it was a cool hot rod, right? And then my square body's is 74. So I was a freshman in high school when that happened. Now I own one.
Bruce, You actually had cars in your high school? I thought you were all still
We
horses.
still did them like Flintstone style, dude. They had no floorboards
they
in them.
didn't feed the cars when you were in high school.
Well, and Bruce, I'll mention this too. We talk about square bodies. You and me are a little older than these guys. You and me would have never, ever in our lives thought anyone would want a square body.
Nah, not at all.
We threw them things away in high school. Same with Fox. The deal with the Fox body back in the day was they were $1,500 to replace or $500 to replace. You could stuff all the motor parts in them, right? Like fast as you can get them, wreck it, and just go buy a new shell. Like that was the glory of the Fox body. That's what made them great drag cars, and that's why there's so few nice ones left.
Right, they were used
because
up.
most of them got wrecked on the drag strip. And the square body Chevy trucks, the same thing. Is you just go grab a new box, go grab a new truck. You know what I mean? Like we threw them away.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of the thing with the square bodies was instead of primer, they would just use acid that caused rust, and then they'd paint over that from the factory so that they would just rust out immediately when they got them. I remember seeing those trucks 2-3 years old with like flapping quarter panels and back in the day.
I had one that was so bad that we just took the box side and lifted it up and moved it over and set it on the bumper because it was hanging so bad. I mean, this half the box floor was gone, whatever. It was just junk. But
so when Bruce is, like I said, from California, as you know, and last year when he came out to Back to the 50s, big show out here, it was we were driving down the highway. I was pointing out to him, I'm like, look at the rust on these cars and trucks. I mean, look, there's no inspections out here, so you can drive whatever. And there was a guy, and it must have been, I think it was a Suburban in front of us, and the steel bumper had rotted through, which is a common thing we all see, right? Bruce is like, how do you rut through, rust out an 1/8-inch steel bumper? I'm like, it happens all the time. We're driving in salt.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah, because I look at my truck and I'm going like, because I've neglected it a little bit, there's a little bit of cancer on it, but nothing like I saw when I was in Minnesota. I was just like, oh my God, this stuff was just terrible.
So I'm going to bring up some pictures here. We're going to talk square body. This is what we're talking about. So this one here is one Ron had done. This truck was spectacular. What year is this, Ron? Tell us a little bit about this one.
That's a 1976. So this is a 1976 Scottsdale 3/4 ton. The client I built it for, he got it off a buddy. His buddy inherited it, from his grandpa or his dad. I can't remember the specifics, but his buddy's gonna hang a plow on it. It's got 8,800 miles on it. This is the cleanest, most honest square body Chevy truck I think I've ever seen.
Really?
The only rust we fixed on it was on the door from the like tow mirrors, farm mirrors, where they bolted in the middle of the door or whatever.
We've got some pictures there too, Bruce. I think you've got that on your set. So
Yeah,
this is on his website. So if you go to his website, you can see it.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to build, but in a lot of the pleasure of a build is working with a pleasurable client, someone who knows what they want and has specifics. It makes it very easy. No changes in decision and things like that really helps out when you're building something.
So I've got a question for you on this one, on this particular build, Ron. Is these trucks were notoriously not really well lined up. The body panels weren't all that great to start out with a lot of times. How did you get this one? Because it is absolutely like glass straight. It's gorgeous. The amount of work that you did to get this thing so straightened out. Was there a lot of struggles getting like door gaps and all that kind of stuff to line up, or was it because it was so nice and such low mileage? Maybe it wasn't
because it was as nice as it was. It made our job very easy. We did actually, like, you could a couple pictures ago, you could see a cowl hood.
Yep.
We did an aftermarket cowl hood, painted it and everything, and we just kept looking at it. And me and the client and the guys, like my guys, they're the best, right? And we mill over everything and overthink everything, right? So we're looking at it and we're like, God, it looks great, but something's off, right? He goes, I have the stock. He brought the stock hood. The stock hood looks so much better than that cowl hood. As far as the gaps and the lines and all that stuff, very minimal adjustment needed to happen because of how nice the truck really was.
Mm-hmm.
When we get into building a car, say we're doing a Chevelle or a different Chevy truck, and we need to buy a fender, right? Like the fender's too far gone. We have to buy one. The aftermarket fender will take extremely more work to make perfect than a factory one will.
That's beautiful.
Aftermarket fenders are made from molds or forms that were bought from the aftermarket company, usually from GM after they'll use them till they get out of specs.
Right.
And then the GM or whoever's making their fenders will just sell them to a company who's going to make the aftermarket stuff. Like that's usually the process that it goes. So the tolerance goes down the line, right?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what happens. I mean, I'm in production, so I understand how that happens. Any tool has a life cycle, and then it gets out of spec. Well, there's still a lot of value to it because they're very expensive. And if someone make the parts that fits okay for the average Joe just wants to fix his truck and go back to work the next day, it's perfect for that. But
body
truck,
shop, collision
Yep.
shop, like for the most part, it's probably just fine. But if you take something to a car show, like someone's looking down that line, like they're
oh yeah,
they're looking down that line. They're going, oh yeah, did you see that?
Yep, that ain't right.
Well, we're going for perfect,
So when you're doing that and you change the hood to the cowl hood, one thing that I know that happens with these square bodies, and I'm not sure if it happened pre-square body, but the hood will actually get that bend in it because it was so poorly engineered that if you
the crease in the center,
crease, yes, exactly, the crease. Do you guys actually fix that? While you're doing the truck and all that, I'm sure you guys have some kind of method.
part of the crease is knowing how to shut the hood as well.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
Yes,
oiling the hinges.
Grabbing a hood and pulling it down is one thing. Hoods push in as they go. I've seen a lot of, and there's a weak spot definitely in, for one, a square body hood, but for two, many hoods, like there's a weak spot. The hood hinges only mount so far, and there's a piece of structure. We don't really add structure, but there's definitely it's a known weak spot, and if a hood is original and there is some rust or metal fatigue, like that's where it's going to give way.
Right. And that's exactly, I learned that very quickly after the third time that I closed my hood, and I went like, damn it.
And at that, if your hood hinges, if the bushings are dry, you have to push harder on the hood to get it to close. And where's the fold spot? Like what's going to give up first?
Yeah, it's part of my lubrication maintenance maintenance round with that. So
keep your hood hinges maintained to keep your hood as straight as possible, maybe.
Yeah. So yeah, so another thing that I found is that, yeah, like you said, getting these parts aligned, and even with an original, like I remember Dodge Chargers were always notorious for their doors just practically falling off, and being up and down, or you'd have to lift it up to close it, or do whatever to. I mean, I'm sure you come across a lot of that stuff, and that stuff has to be taken care of during restoration. That's for sure. So,
Absolutely, and a lot of times, so when you build a car, you have to pick a point to start when you're gapping something, correct? So you have to start at things that can't be changed and move to the things that can be changed. So if somebody puts a new quarter panel on and they don't align it correctly, well, you align the door to the quarter panel, and then you align the fender to the door. So it goes from the back forward. So if you put the quarter panel on incorrectly and align the door to the quarter panel, and then align the fender to that, you're just, it's a compounding factor as you go. If you try and align a fender to a door that has bad hinges, well, then the door is not, it moves.
Yeah.
So if it moves, then it changes every time you open and close it, and that fender is not going to be in the same spot. It's gonna be in the same spot. It's just be wrong.
Yeah, and I think
so you have to correct everything possible, and that I guess I would consider part of a restoration. You can't fix the fender gap if you don't fix the door.
Okay, so go ahead, Ken.
I'm going to switch gears a little bit. You had mentioned, you talked about your crew. You do have a great crew up there. I met them. How many guys do you have up there now working with you?
Six of us.
6? Wow, it's a pretty good size shop. So kind of transitioning from that into the business side of things. So you're in a business that we're not going to get into what things cost, because nothing costs what you think, and you get what you pay for. I'm just going to say that. But you're working on large projects that take many months, sometimes years to accomplish. So how do you've got 6 guys in there. You've got a shop that's what, 7,000 square feet, somewhere in there? 10,000 square feet.
So and just to, I'm not going to cut you short, but there's different. Not everything is a full restoration, right? So we have, like, sometimes we'll just replace a motor, or there's a guy who bought a collector car, and it doesn't run right. Like, we do that too, so there is short projects and long projects, of course. So there's a lot of very long projects, a year, 2 years, but the short ones too, like, we do a lot of that. We do a lot of an engine or drum to disc swap or something like that, something to make a car more comfortable for the client to drive.
No, that makes sense. And that was kind of my question, because when I go up there, and Ron will call me if he's got some cool project that he has some weird painting or something he needs done on it, or some pinstriping done. I get the call, which is awesome, because it's you're really the only shop I work with anymore, which is pretty cool. Because I know when Ron calls, I'm going to be working on something really neat. We've got some pictures of some of the ones we'll show you later, but I never see the guys that just want the disc brake conversion, or the that kind of thing. I know you and I have talked about putting a Coyote 5.0 new Mustang engine in my 97 Lincoln. That's something that I can physically put the motor in. I can do that, no problem. But I'm going to need some real help with motors, and this is some of the stuff that I'm going to show you a picture here of some of what Ron's been working on in his shop. This is a shot from last year, but you can talk a little bit. So you've got an old station wagon here, a Corvette, a Firebird, a Camaro, a couple of engines sitting over here. And let me show you these engines before you start explaining these. These are something a little bit special. I gotta shrink my there's that truck again. Sorry about this. So here's the two engines. There's like 1,300 horsepower sitting on this table. So one of them's a supercharged Ford Coyote
that's
motor.
light, buddy. No, yeah. Okay.
Am I light?
So the Ford engine, that's
This
for the
guy.
wagon.
Yep.
That's for the wagon in the other picture. That's a 760 horse
Wow.
GT 500. I think they call it a Predator.
Yeah.
It's a 5.2. It's going in that 64 Country Squire wagon, which is way more than it needs, but just enough, right? It's actually in there now. Oh, it's going to be a really fun car. It's really going to be a fun car, and it's not going to look like anything besides a wagon that lays on the ground, right?
Is that an engine that you made? That is that your
nope,
engine?
that's straight from Ford.
Okay.
Straight from Ford.
Wow.
Ford Performance. Like, it's buyable. It's gettable. Like, you can just order it. It will be 100% worry free for that client to drive wherever they want to go. Like, they will be able to get in that car and turn the key and not, besides watching gauges for something silly, like, it has a warranty and will go.
Yeah.
They should be able to get in that car and drive it 100,000 miles with not one worry about that engine. And just blow the tires off it if they want to.
Well, it's 700 horse. Yeah, I'd imagine that would. When you think about it, when you're looking at classic cars versus new cars, the whole resto rod thing, like Power Cruise and Power Tour, these events that were big events that actually took cars and drove them across country, it created a whole new genre of cars where people are taking new motors and all the high tech stuff and putting them in the older cars. So you've got the styling, the feel, the rawness of the old car, but with the reliability of something brand new. And also with that, those engines don't get amazing mileage, but your average, LS swap that you're going to put a 6-liter LS motor out of a Escalade, rebuild it and drop it in a Chevelle, that Chevelle's going to get 28, 29 miles a gallon.
Probably not.
Well,
probably not. It sounds good. It's probably not gonna. I mean, we don't want to.
But it's not getting 10.
Bean count the damn thing, but it's gonna get way better than a small block Chevy or a big block Chevy ever would.
Mhm.
And it's going to be reliable. On pump gas, we're not dumping 2 quarts of oil in it every time we have to take the thing out either.
Right.
It's just going to be good, reliable, responsive horsepower. And I mean, 15, 20, I could see all day long. I would never say 20. I don't think I've got 28 miles a gallon anything I've ever had, but you guys might drive different than I do.
Now there's something to be said about taking like my 74 and building it from the ground up with all the original parts and everything that it had back when it was 1974, and that's all fine and dandy, but it would still drive like a 74 Chevy pickup. I think that what most people are looking at, and I've struggled with this all along with my truck, I'm just going like, I really don't want this thing to drive like a 74. I want it to drive like I just pulled it off the lot today.
This is a thing that I run into, Bruce, is a lot of people have nostalgia of the car that they had back in the day, right? Mm-hmm. I had for instance, a guy will come in and be like, yeah, I had a 69 Camaro. Loved it. Big block, 4-speed, blah, blah, blah. 3-4 race cam, hop a Coke can, right?
Yeah.
That's not a real scenario. We hear it a lot. But they're like, yeah, so I bought one. I love the car. I hate to drive it. It's a pain in the dick to drive. I can't park it. My wife hates it, blah, blah, blah. It stinks. It doesn't start all the time, blah, blah, blah. What can we do? Well, what we can do is we can put it on. either a modern chassis, which is the best route, second best route, modernize the suspension, modernize the brakes, modernize the steering, and fuel inject it so that it thinks for itself, and it doesn't matter if it's 45 degrees or 85 degrees.
Right.
It's going to start, it's going to run good.
Yes.
We can put modern air conditioning, HVAC system in it, because I mean, I can make the old air conditioning work, but it's not efficient. And R12 is a thing of the past. It's expensive.
Yep.
R134 is even becoming a thing of the past at this point. Like that's what we're using right now. But I can see the point where we'll be moving on to whatever the new stuff is. I don't know because I'm out of that realm, but it'll be the next step for guys in my field is to move on to whatever EPA says we need to use next.
Right. Yeah, my delusions of being worry-free from going from California to Minnesota in July are really kind of like going like, here I'm going to be stuck in the Rockies in Colorado going like, why is this thing not running?
Even at that, like, so say a carburetor, and I know everybody did it back in the day, but like, is elevation going to mess with your carburetor?
Right.
It's not going to mess with your Holly fuel injection.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to compensate for it.
Anyone that had a nice Holly, like a 750 double pumper that put weight, and they'd throw that on a 350 with a mild cam, which was way too much carburetor for it. You drive through a car wash and it would run different on the other side.
Yeah.
It was, I got really, really good with carburetors. I enjoy them. I like them. I'm going to put fuel injection on anything I have because it's just so much better.
And I graduated high school in 97. Fuel injection was coming in. I started like professionally working on cars as a mechanic right out of high school. So there was carburetors and they were all shitty ones.
Yeah.
And then it went into fuel injection. The 90s was like when everything kind of changed. And so most of the cars that I was repairing were fuel injected. Like that's what I cut my teeth on, I guess I would say. Carburetors, definitely dealt a lot with carburetors, but they were like, it was a carburetor with more vacuum hoses than it ever needed. It wasn't a hot rod. It was like a station wagon with a 305 and a quadrojet.
Yep. Yeah, the quadrojet with it was like the Borg with all the crap.
Yeah, exactly. It was like the Borg.
They were awful. Well,
I had some Hondas. I didn't even know where all the vacuum lines went. Like, what do these things do? We just start cutting them off and plugging them.
I've got another question for you relating to the business side of things. So one of the things when you got the place, you rebranded, which was of course a brilliant idea. When someone names a business after themselves, which is nothing wrong with doing, guys, but if you want to sell that business, it's going to change the name because you're not there anymore. But you rebranded. I look at the way that you're building the brand now. You're traveling around the country. And bringing the cars to many shows. So you got to load up a truck, a trailer, and drive from Minnesota in the middle of winter, middle of summer, no matter when it is, down to Las Vegas for SEMA you went last year, and all over the place. Can you tell us a little bit about, number one, why are you traveling around the country? I mean, that has to be quite an expense. Two, I know you bring your family with you sometimes, which is wonderful because you've got an amazing wife and a beautiful daughter that are just they're such pleasures to deal with when we're at shows and stuff like that. I love when we can interact. You've kind of made this a family thing. So I guess tell us a little about the travels, the marketing that you do there and how that's going.
Okay. Well, so I guess my thought on that and to start off with the naming, and I've worked, like, this isn't my first job. Obviously, like I started here when I was in my 30s. I had been around and had other businesses and things like that. And the one thing that I do think is, if you start a business, you should not think of it as your end all whatever. You also should not think of it or put it on your family that they're going to take it over, which is what I think a lot of people used to think. They're like, I'm going to build this business. My sons are going to take it over. My daughter's going to take it over, blah, 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 whatever. You never know what life's going to throw at you. You never know what life's going to throw at them or what their aspirations are. So in building a business, if you're going to build a business, it's a brand. It's not a business, it's a brand. So you should be able to sell that brand at some point.
Exactly. It's hard to do when you're personally connected to that.
But there's so many, John's Plumbing and so on and so forth. That's only thinking of, like, okay, I'm in East Bethel. We're thinking about East Bethel. Well, there's one John's Plumbing in East Bethel, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people that want things built for them, hot rods, etc. That why would I limit myself to East Bethel, right? So part of the reasons that I travel is, especially today, there's so many ways to reach out and get attention or find a client and clients you need to be comfortable with. So, you can only build so many cars for people in East Bethel or in Minnesota. We need to extend our reach further and find people that want our brand.
I would add to that too, with the inception of like some of these big auctions, Barrett Jackson and Mecum auctions. The other thing that's happened with the classic car market and the custom car market is there's been so many more ways of getting the car to you or moving it around the country that are trustworthy. I recently bought a Suburban down in Arizona and had it shipped up to me up in Wisconsin because I wanted a rust-free truck. So I spent the $1,500 to have them ship it, and I didn't even think twice about it because it's like,
by the time you went there and got it, it would cost you more than that.
Yeah, it would have cost me $1,500, and it needed tires, it needed a couple things, so I would have to fix it with that. For that, but I think because of that, when in the past, especially in the prior owner, Roger, who's still a good friend of mine, it was mostly local people, within 300 miles, basically that he was working on. You occasionally get somebody from out of town, but with what you're doing,
and now even like this, like Bruce is in California, you're in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. Jason's in Minnesota.
Jason's in Minnesota, unfortunately.
Yep, I agree.
Well, here we are. No, I love it here. I do. I really do. But some of my clients are out of state. I right now, I think I'm about 50-50 local in out of area anyways, I would say. And we can communicate this way. There's Zoom. There's all these other ways that we can communicate. It's so much easier to send pictures or video and things like that it really does not matter where you're at. So that is why
it's incredible.
I thought it was a good idea to start the traveling and if they're looking for somebody, it doesn't matter if we're in Columbus. It doesn't matter if we're in Daytona. Even at that, the one car, I'm building a car for a guy that's in southern Minnesota, but I found the car for him in Daytona.
Oh, really?
Nikki and I were traveling, and I knew the guy was looking for a '69 Camaro, and I'm like, I found it. We're at a car show. It's in the swap meet, and I called him, and he's like, here. I'm like, here's the number. Here's the pictures. And he goes, 2 weeks later, he called me. He goes, it's on the way.
There's there's been so many TV shows of builders and different things like that, and a lot of those shows are they're pretty crappy, to tell you the truth. And one of them is Gas Monkey Garage, which I can't stand. But this is one of the things he does. It's him, and he has a buyer, and they have people that just go around the country looking for cars, and they'll go buy collections. He was up in Minnesota about a year and a half ago, I believe. He bought a whole bunch of cars off of a collection. This is happening around the country because now the old cars, when we're talking classic cars, our friend Duchess that's listening live to us tonight, she put a good phrase in. She goes, old versus classic. Those are two different things. My Lincoln's a classic car, but it's not an old car. It's a 97. And
it's old.
You were still in high school when that car came.
I was just getting out, buddy.
Me too.
Yeah, you guys were just getting out of high school. I graduated in '86. Bruce was he didn't finish high school because he got drafted into World War I. But but yeah, it's interesting. So traveling around the country, that adds, on the business side of things, that adds a whole nother layer of, okay, now you need a truck that's going to be able to pull a car trailer with one or two cars in it. So you're not talking about a half ton or a 3/4 ton. You need a 1-ton truck. You need a long trailer. You got to be able to drive cross country. There's hotels. There's travel. There's all these things. And then there's breakdowns.
Even as well as that can, especially here in Minnesota, like the weather. So you're in the motorcycle business, right?
Yeah.
Like if a motorcycle guy wouldn't pick up and deliver cars in the winter or bikes in the winter, he could be out of business in a hurry, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's something that Roger never did that I implemented even when I worked for him. Is I'm like I got a truck and I have an enclosed trailer. I'm like, let's just offer to pick up and deliver, and that extremely helped keep the business flowing in the winter. If we need to transport this stuff, and of course, same time, that involves insurance and other things. But I had a guy, I hate to even tell this story, but I had a client, had a car, needed work. It was already painted. It was like we were doing like finishing work or something. He goes, I'm like, do you want me to pick the car up? Nope, I'll get it to you. Okay, perfect. He goes, I got a plan. Great. So it shows up. It was like a junk hauler, like someone you would call to pick up scrap out of the yard, like 1-800 junk. Shows up, deck over trailer, crappy ramps. They scuffed the valance on the way down, but he was really proud that the guy hauled it here for $75. I'm like, that cost you $600 in paint work.
Yeah.
To have that guy haul your car here. There needs to be, and I get calls like that too. Like, I mean, we talk about the transport and people buy stuff and have it shipped from here to there or whatever, and stuff happens in transport and it needs to get fixed. It happens, unfortunately, but one of the things that I transport the cars personally because I probably give more of a shit than anybody else.
Yes.
Sometimes even the client.
Yeah, it's your reputation.
I want it to arrive here the same way that it left their place.
And it also shows it proves you have a good crew, because when you're away for maybe a week at a time getting a car somewhere on the other side of the country, you've got a crew that you can rely on that are good, they're trustworthy, do incredibly good work.
I need to trust them to hold down the fort.
Yes,
absolutely, and that's I have that. Like this crew that I have right now is the best guys I've ever worked with. 100%.
Now staying on the business portion. So if I was to say, I want to start doing restorations, I want to be a classic car builder, I want this and that. I was at the Back to the 50s weekend. That's where I met you last year. And when I was walking around there is so many car builders and finishers and this and that. I mean, there was a ton of them there. I mean, I met some of them. I interviewed some. I interviewed you. The competition out there has got to be fierce. And then you traveled, like you said, you traveled to Pomona, you've traveled to other places. Do those builders follow you? Is the competition really stiff? I mean, what are we looking at if somebody like me would say, I want to do this? That's a huge commitment. I know,
So
number
it
one.
is and it isn't, right? Like, so I go to these other shows, and any good builder, we just become friends.
Mhm.
It's
Like,
true.
I know guys that build, and so my number one goal is if one of my cars ends up in their shop, that they don't look at it and go, "What the fuck did he do?"
Right?
They really like, I talent recognizes talent. So when you meet a builder and you can tell that they build the same quality that you build, you instantly have a mutual respect for each other.
Mhm.
I know builders from all over the place, and part of and so and we can talk about SEMA too later, but the not this year. This year I went with the off road group, but last year I went with the Hot Rod Industry Alliance, and I ended up there with a builder that I had just met that I didn't even know was going to be there in the same group that I was. Like, I was at Nashville, and we didn't bring a car or anything. We were at the Triple Crown of Rotting, and Nikki and I and one of my vendors are walking around, and we're looking at cars, and I'm looking at a truck. I'm like standing there talking to a guy, and he's like, it was like a C10 and it had a Duramax motor in it.
Mhm.
And he goes,
Nice.
"You didn't expect that, did you?" And he had a southern accent, and I like started giving him shit about his accent. Then I started drinking his beer, and, and the next thing you know, it's like we followed each other on social media, blah blah blah, whatever, and we started talking a little bit. And I get to Vegas, and he's in the same group that I'm in at SEMA. I'm like,
Funny.
well, shit, how did this happen? Like I met this dude 4 months ago, and now we're in this same group, and now I talk to this dude at least once a month. A fellow builder. He's from Alabama. We got a lot in common, and then I see him again at another show, and it's like, well, now we're bouncing ideas off of each other, and how do you bill for this, and what do you do about this, and hey, have you ever done this? Like, we're colleagues, and we're working through it together. We don't have competition. Like, the best compliment someone can give you is when you pull in, they go, "Oh fuck, you beat me."
Yeah.
Like, oh shit. Well, you
You
got
beat me
it
here.
this time.
It
And, and the goal is to
That's a
get
good
them on the
spot.
next one. It's
That's a
not
good
really to beat them. It's just to hope that your level is as good or better than theirs.
that was a good question, Bruce, because the industry really is like that. Everyone appreciates everyone else's work, even in the
Even local, even
yeah,
local, and that's like, a fellow builder, Vasios has an open house. I'm going.
yeah, exactly.
Educations has an open house. I'm going. That's if I can, if it allows, I'm going, and I want to see what they're doing. I want to check out their equipment, and it's not because I'm trying to spy or whatever. If they have a question or have a problem with a product or a piece of equipment, and they think I might have an answer, I hope they call me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I'm going to do the same thing.
and I asked that question only because of the fact to get you to that family and that camaraderie
Mhm.
portion that I know that's what kind of permeates in the industry, and because talent, rises talent up. I mean, there's certain things that you get stuck on, and maybe another car builder gets stuck on, a wood
And
yeah.
TV or something like that would want you to think that everybody, like, F them guys or whatever. It's dude, it's
Not
not
like
that
that.
at all. And I don't. It really shouldn't be. Even I can't remember who it was, but someone not that it was even before I even bought the shop, was like, they were trying to get something done for some show, and they needed like a piece of hose you couldn't get anywhere, and they called. I'm like, yeah, dude, I got some. Come over and get it.
Yeah.
You know, bring it back when yours comes in or whatever. Just bring it back. Or I think I even told him I didn't give a shit. You know, just here, get it and get it done. They were trying to get to Des Moines. They were trying to get to Good Guys. He was what's his name from Tin Man. It was Tin Man.
Oh,
He
Tin
was
Man.
trying to get his Cruz.
Yep.
Yeah. He was trying to get his truck done for, and it wasn't even him. It was one of his guys. They're like, I don't know, long shot. I'm like, yeah, come over. I got some. Come get it.
Let me. I'll tell you a little story, and it kind of goes with the origin story of your company and his company. Both of them started in garages. I mean, when I started working with Roger back in 2000, I was going to his house in his garage and hand pinstriping cars and doing stuff there and airbrushing. Sure. Tim Cruz is the same way. He started in his garage in his backyard creating parts, and he grew it into a really solid business. And there's, within, if you draw like a 30-mile circle around Ron's shop, there is some you got car creation.
It's
Mike
crazy.
Divers down there. The guy's 85 years old. He's still, I mean, they built some crazy stuff, and you got them. You got what was the one? Kurt Creative Metalworks. That was another one. And in Blaine area, there's a whole bunch of them. And these guys are these fabricate. Now, Creative Metalworks doesn't do any paint. All they do is fabricate and set up chassis and do crazy body stuff, and then they hand it to a painter. Ron Cottrell at Unique Auto. He's the painter guy, and he's another guy that it's super high end cars, and he's got about a year and a half wait for people to get in. And Ron, in what he's doing, his building is different. So the Unique Auto Body just does paint, and this other place just does metal fab. This other place takes it to a level. You can bring Ron a car, and he'll go from. I mean, you guys don't do in-house upholstery, but you work with upholsterers to get that stuff done. So that as you're building the car, if you're building something from scratch, there's one. Bruce, maybe you can find the 33 Ford Vicky. That's it's white and blue with the flames on it.
Yeah, let me get that.
The interior in that car. When you showed that to me, Ron, that was jaw-dropping to me when I saw that. It was just, I mean, the car itself was incredible.
I work a lot. I work a lot with Dan Knish from Knish Customs.
There you go.
And that was I don't remember when I found him before I even started here. The shop I was at before, we were looking to do a 68 Chevelle, and I was like Googling 68 Chevelle interiors or whatever. And it came up, and I'm like, telling my buddy Dave that I worked with then, I'm like, dude, this is the shit. Look at this, And I wanted him to do the 69 Camaro that we took to SEMA in 2019.
Yes. That was gorgeous.
And it, that client already had someone else slated to do the interior, and they did it. And it was horseshit. It sucked. It was bad. And I'm not going to name names and whatever. It just wasn't good enough. It didn't add any value to the car. It didn't. The car was worthy of more. So me and that client got together, and I'm like, hey, you need to talk to Dan, and let's see what we can do. And that was actually what got that car to SEMA, was that interior. It was the leather rep had known Dan and saw one of his other builds, and he goes, if you would have used our leather in this, we would have taken your car to SEMA. And he goes, well, hey, just so you know, there's this high-end 69 Camaro that I'm about to do. I could use your leather in. He goes, put our leather in that. If you put our leather in that car, you have a spot at SEMA.
And that puts you on the map.
So they flew in from Washington, met at the shop, and looked at the Camaro, and Dan drove up here, and he's like an hour and a half away from here. We all had a little meeting. We go, yep. All right. Ticket to Vegas. Let's go.
Cool.
That was the start of that whole.
He does amazing work.
First thing I ever had Dan, and I put my trust in him, and he fucking nailed it, and off we went.
So
so he did that. He did the Vicky as well, that blue and white one we just went through.
He did the Vicky as well.
And I'm just gonna throw a flag up on that car there, that blue Vicky, because that's one of the cars that I was able to, I had the privilege, I'm gonna say, to work with Ron on, and I did like such little touches to it. I mean, I just did a little pinstripe on the flames, a little airbrushing on it, but it was the owner of that car too. This is another part of the business that
I had worked something that I wanted to talk to you about, because you say this is an entrepreneurship podcast. Mm-hmm. A lot of the people that I build cars for have become very good mentors to me.
Yes.
And Ken knows, because him and I had long conversations with the owner of that car.
Yeah.
And Mike walked me through the buying of this business.
Mm-hmm.
He's a very intelligent man, very smart business sense. And without him, I don't know if I would be where I'm at. And all he was a guy who walked in because of Roger's reputation.
Yep.
And him and I hit it off right away. And he has mentored me in business. You need mentors. You need people to, and that's another one of his cars right there. That's same guy.
That would be the American.
That's the first car. That's the first car that I built for him, and the Vicky is the second car.
What
not
I was
only him, but multiple clients. And I feel like I've also now gone the other way with talking other people through business things.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys, they know what they got, how they got to a point where they could afford cars like this a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And they're more than willing to reach out and help someone find their way through the business world.
I would say though, Ron, the reason why he was willing to help you, you were open to it. And this guy we were there. We must have been there 8 or 10 hours that day that I striped the car, and he was there probably 4 or 5 of those hours talking to us. And this gentleman was larger than life. His personality, Bruce, you'd love this guy. We could sit and talk with him for 3 days straight. I mean, just super brilliant, self-made, everything that is the American dream of starting with nothing and building it into something amazing. That's this guy, and willing to help. But Ron's the person sitting there. And, you and I had, before you even bought the place, when I was doing stuff for Roger, you and I would have conversations about, just different stuff and different ways of doing things. I remember there was a Fox body Mustang I was just painting in the bumper. This kind of an inlay.
The first time I ever met you.
Yeah. Yep. And we sat in bullshit for the whole time I was doing it there. It was fantastic. I'm like, this guy's awesome, Ron. And, you get to be friends with these people in a really good way, because they want to help you. They want to see you succeed. I had worked in shops before. That's my history. I built custom cars and bikes, and that's where I came from. That's the world I came from. And I noticed that with clients too. I mean, you're not every client's perfect, that, but a lot of them, you're building their dream. You're building their fucking dream. And that is really a burden on the builder. And if they don't realize that, and you realize this is what I like about you. You realize that this is this person's dream, and it might be they can afford it without even thinking about it. They might be second mortgaging their house to build it. That whatever it is.
Every client is different in that is another thing to navigate in this business. To some people, they are strapping themselves to fulfill their dream. And some people, it's just another thing, right?
Yes.
So me, I have to navigate that.
Mm-hmm. And it's tricky. And you and I have worked on some cool things. There was one of the favorite things I've ever done on a car, and you're going to find this funny because I've done a lot of cool shit. But one of the funnest things I ever did was that little Firebird that I did on the sides of the panel of the Trans Am of one of your customers.
Oh yeah, yep.
It was working with the guy was cool, you know, and the story is, this is the other thing, you guys, every car has a story. Even, I mean, every car has a story. There's something to it. In like the gentleman we were just talking about, with the two hot rods, if I remember right, he built the second one for his brother so he had something to cruise around with him. I mean, that was the story. He's like, well, my brother needs a car too. And
he never gave it to his brother. He loves it too much. He won't give it to him.
Yeah, that was scope creep.
But that was the story was in the beginning that we were building 2 American Graffiti coupes,
right?
One for Minnesota, one for Florida, and then the Vicky was for his brother, and then him and his wife really likes the Vicky. Like she loves it. He's like, no, this is mine.
It's that
too
car.
Nice. It's too nice. It's an art piece. You know, he loves the paint on it.
Yeah, it really came out cool. But it's one of those things. These are more than you're creating more than just fixing an old car or creating something. Yeah, there's the two of them parked together. They really, you're saving a moment in history for a person. It's a family heirloom. I mean, these are, we're not getting into prices, but these are both 6-figure cars. These aren't $2,500 hot rod builds.
In a lot of the cars that I do are some sort of heirloom. Like when we talk about like repairs or something like that, a lot of people inherit a car.
Yeah.
Or it's like, you know, something their father had and they cruised in, you know, with their dad, and they're like, can you just make sure this thing's safe? And we're not going to sell it. We want to keep this thing and pass it down again after, you know, after whatever. And especially with Back to the 50s being here in Minnesota, like
yeah,
there's a lot of cars that only see Back to the 50s.
What an awesome show. What an awesome show.
It really is. And there's, you know, it's going to evolve here soon some, and it needs to.
Yep, it has to. Well, people are aging out, and you know, that show, it's number one. I call it the best kept secret in the United States is Back to the 50s. You know, it's damn near the size of SEMA in square footage.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's a huge.
It is. It is huge. But yes. So we talked a lot about Back to the 50s. We talked about a lot of the restorations and stuff that you've done for Back to the 50s and other car shows, because you go to other car shows around the area. I think in our second hour, what we're going to concentrate on is this SEMA association that you belong to, and the differences in between. And so we're going to go ahead and close out this portion, and some of our Patreon members that we have, that you can go to patreon.com/weathered soul. If you sign up for the Patreon site, then you can get the content that we're going to do next, like tomorrow. And
I'm gonna grab some ice, boys.
Yeah, no problem.
Absolutely.
And then we're going to go ahead and close out this show today. And thank you for being here, Ron, as we kind of transition into everything else. And we're going to let Ken go ahead and post himself, and Jason can post himself as far as what we do here for the weather report. And just go.
As we're talking about this, why don't we put up let's put up Ron's website, if you could.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
And we'll go put that on the big screen as we talk about the wonders of artwork in the world. So go to madkstudio.com. So I'm an artist. I do all kinds of different stuff. And recently I've come out with 2 coloring books, which are pretty interesting. They're great for relaxation, anxiety relief, and just to do something cool. But I also have tons of artwork on there, originals. I've got prints, everything you can imagine on there. For that. So that's madkstudio.com, MADDKstudio.com. And now I'll hand it down to Jason Horrible Designs, who I just contracted to make some stuff for me because he makes some great stickers and all kinds of, if you want some crazy stuff made for your custom for you, Jason's the guy. So Jason, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jason from Horrible Designs. I sell mugs, t-shirts, vinyl decals, 20-ounce skinny tumblers, shot glasses, drink koozies, drink coasters, mouse pads, magnets, and stickers. And when I actually get around to it, I'm going to start listing some 10.5-ounce rock glasses as well. You can find me on my website at horribledesigns.com. You can also find me at Amazon Handmade, Michael's Maker Place, eBay, Etsy, TikTok Shop, and Walmart.com. I also do custom work as well, to which I just did some stuff for one of Ken's friends that will be arriving tomorrow.
Very cool. And with that, I think we can hand it over to Ron. Ron, it's your time to plug away. Shameless capitalism at its finest. Go. Here's your website up.
Here I am. I'm Ron from North Speed Restoration. We do hot rod restoration, classic car work, speed shop stuff, big brakes, brake conversions, transmissions, engines, anything hot rod, whatever we can do to make your classic car work the way you want it to, that's what we do.
I'll put it this way. If you've been to Minnesota and been to a car show or any kind of car lot everywhere, when the coolest car you've ever seen pulls in, Ron probably built it. So go check out his stuff.
Thank you.
So Ron, thanks so much for being here. And you can hang on with us for a minute. We'll tell you about what the next session is about. And but we appreciate you coming on, especially last minute. It was cool to have you be able to jump on. So we really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very much, Ron. Take care. And you guys, we'll see you next week with Ron as we dive into some more stuff as far as hot rods and restorations and his association with SEMA, which is another association that he builds for. And we just thank you for being on the show. Like, share, and subscribe to the show if you like it. Share it with 4 of your friends, maybe one that you don't like, because we're growing every day. And we're going to be back next week with another edition of the Wood Report. You guys be good to yourselves, and we'll see you later.